What do I mean by national? Is it a trick question? It means the interaction of local institutions, so universities, government, research centres, training, blah, blah, blah. So if you look at places like Korea, Taiwan, before that, Japan, maybe 20 years ago, you see certain patterns emerge in terms of certain institutions. That's early. It normally takes at least an hour for that to happen. You see certain patterns emerging, okay? And they tend to, if you like, underwrite or promote certain types of innovation. So they're not universal in terms of, you get these daft indices. Don't you? Singapore's the most innovative place in the world. And you go there and you're thinking, where is it? Where is it? I can't see it at all. And I used to teach there for 8 years for Imperial, and I didn't see it then. Because they're daft, because they're indices based on aggregate measure. But when you scratch below that, you can say for certain types of innovation, say biopharma or electronics, then these institutions add up to create an advantage that other companies outside that environment cannot benefit from. Okay, so it would be automotive, consumer electronics in Japan 20 years ago. More recently, it's semiconductors in Taiwan. Yeah, in South Korea, mainly they've had a few dead ends. It's quite interesting when you look at the history of these companies. Do you know where Samsung started its first business?
Something like bicycle.
No, it's just as plausible as my answer, but yeah, they've been around a long time. They're post Second World War, but I'm sure they've gone through that route. It was noodles. They're a noodle processing company. They built machines to make noodles. Before I go, we laugh in the aisles and such like. Yeah, there are some links to what they do now, but not many. You know, and over a period of 40, 50 years, with government intervention, change in management, lots of dead ends and mistakes, they end up where basically they're active in one or two core businesses. But we're not here to discuss them, but it's an example of what I'm talking about. That sort of trajectory is quite common, and if you just look at the strategy of Samsung, and there are Harvard cases on it, they have no answers. You say, how could that work? Yeah, and why would you want to emulate that? The answer is, in isolation of the national context, it wouldn't work. And it makes no sense. So you've got to take into account the context. Sometimes it's national, if it's Singapore, Taiwan. Sometimes it's regional, if you look at mainland China. Often the regional policies outweigh the national ones because it's such a large environment with very devolved responsibilities. So what we're saying is, it makes a difference and we can measure it. The bad news is we can't do much about it. Yeah? But we could do something about it. What could we do about it? If we realise that national, and to a lesser extent regional, innovation systems influence innovation strategy, what can we do about it?
If you're in the wrong nation, you can
You mean like Australians and cricket, for example? Yeah? You could just That's why I raised it, yeah? Having said that, it seems that all our cyclists are winning. We've got strange accents and backgrounds, but apparently they're all English, but it doesn't matter because they're winning. But yeah, good point. And it's a relevant one for the following reason. If you do studies of things like venture capital and startups, and we just finished a 5-year study, when you get below the headline cliche that it's all in California, it's actually all in a very narrow part of California. You think, how can this be? How can this be? And you talk to people, and there was a study down in Brazil, and they were genuinely believed it was climate. They thought it was the perfect climate for entrepreneurship in terms of humidity and sun and everything. And I'm not kidding you here. Well, I might be kidding you. Don't know yet, do you? I'm not kidding you here. They set up a science park in a part of Brazil that had almost the identical physical climate. Yeah?
It's a rubbish climate up there.
Huh?
It's a rubbish climate.
Yeah, but you say rubbish, but you'll be careful because if you look at productivity of scientific papers, it's highest in Finland per capita because it's a rubbish climate and it's dark all the time. So you sit and writing papers. Rubbish climate may be for life, but it's called an attribution error. You look at something happening and you look at some factors and you say, oh, there's correlation of 5% or something. Therefore, that causes that. It's rubbish. If you look at places like California and to a lesser extent Boston grouping, you find actually that something like 70 or 80% of people come from outside. Because of the environment is supportive, venture capital, major university institutions that create both talent and resources. And so people come from elsewhere to exploit that network. So the so what is, once you realise there's a big chunk of stuff that does depend on the environment, is you figure out, well, what environments are most conducive to what I want to do? Yeah? And the bad news is if you look at those studies, there are outliers, very, very unpleasant outliers, where you could be the most brilliant person in the world and you stand zero chance of being successful because of the environment. Yeah? And you could be pretty dumb and mediocre, but in the right environment, you could probably get something off the ground and be successful. And most things are in between.
I think the size of the market also is very relevant. You could start something if you're in a very small country or a small market.
Yeah.
to take advantage of what you're innovating.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's very difficult to take it out to large.
You're right. You're dead right. And there's a small market phenomena. But this is slightly different because we're talking about innovation. Often you'll find, for example, the startups that happen in California and Boston aren't necessarily looking at the US or even North America as their market. They'll often then go back to Taiwan or South Korea or back to India and then grow their businesses there in a different, albeit a large market, but a different market. So they didn't go to North America for the market, they went for the expertise and the links and the funding. And you find that pattern, it doesn't explain everything, but it explains big chunks of things. So you need to be aware of that, yeah? Okay. The second thing, I don't know what you want to call it, we called it position, that's a bit vague. You call it legacy or whatever, yeah? Where you are, how you got there, is terribly important. Now what do we mean by that? Well, for example, there are lots of best-selling books that say, what will Google do, and stuff like that. And my response is, who cares? Yeah? They're in such a position, for a little while, they can do what they like. They can fall flat on their face, which they have several times, yeah? They can flaunt laws, which they do all the time. They can do what they like. Is that good practice? Who cares? It's not necessarily relevant to your good practice. Yeah? So when you're looking at good practice, the idea is how could I apply that and adapt that? And a lot of so-called good practice is embedded in the position of organisation. It's in a position because of brand, reputation, ecosystem, luck, timing. If you look at the timing of many big high-tech companies, yeah, they follow sort of quite a cycle, okay, in terms of the right place, right time, and they grow, and then it's very hard then to assail that position. Now, the lesson might be one of timing, but beyond that, it's hard then to attribute good or bad practices from that, yeah, but it has an effect. Yeah, where you are and how you got there presents certain unique opportunities. Yeah, we can do this because we're Imperial College. Yeah? You can't do that because you're insert college there. Yeah, that doesn't mean you can't do things. It means you do different things, and we'll come back to that again and again and again. Because one of the lessons of all this is this idea of trying to have a differential innovation strategy based on what your capabilities are. So that begs two questions: how do you figure out what your capabilities are, and what do you mean by differential innovation strategy, which is basically what we're going to be talking about. Okay, and the last two are closer to what we're comfortable and familiar with. This idea of capabilities is terribly important, and we'll try to get some definitions later on. And then the sort of, if you like, the lowest level there is subject to the final session, is trying then to exploit external sources of innovation, which is really what's behind the sort of California story, the Route 128 in Boston, and even Cambridge, several orders of magnitude smaller, Cambridge in the UK, for example, is that there are certain networks, geographical, intellectual, and funding, but probably in that order, yeah, that create some sort of advantage that nonetheless needs to be exploited. It's just a potential. There are lots of companies that don't flourish on Route 128. There's many, many companies that don't flourish in California because they're not connected up correctly. They don't identify these things. Okay? So they're the sort of four sets of things that when we're talking about how do we create value through innovation. Okay, so this notion of capabilities we're going to expand upon throughout the sessions, but it's a terribly important one because if you look at research in this area over the last 30, 40 years, and there are many, many reviews of this is just one of them, you find that one of the core explanatory factors is these differential capabilities. And the careful thing is not to be tautological. You know, why were they more successful than them? Because they had unique capabilities. But why did they have unique capabilities? And you regress down, yeah? So trying to figure out, you know, why were certain organizations, particularly firms, consistently outperforming others? Because that's really a sort of a metric for a successful strategy. You know, if you have a one hit, look at my great product, and you're in front of Business Week and you're on Bloomberg. If you watch Bloomberg or Business Week, particularly streamed on TV, and they say, well, why were you successful? Why is this product such a blockbuster? Don't listen to what they're saying because it's irrelevant, yeah? Look into their eyes, and if you've got the screen, sort of, you know, enlarge it. You can see they're completely dead because they don't know. They don't know because the vast majority are one-hit wonders. They got lucky. 2 or 3 things came together and they got lucky. And then because we try to look for patterns, yeah, we all look for patterns. Why did that happen? Sometimes it didn't for no reason, yeah? Good or bad. We're looking for patterns saying, that happened because I did that or because my team did this. And then you did that and your team does that next time and you fall flat on your face. And that's what you see in innovation studies. One big hit, 2 or 3 disasters. Yeah, and you don't hear about them anymore. So the interesting organizations are those who consistently, not always, but consistently deliver across time. Because that's really a metric for successful innovation strategy.